Seattle's skyline shimmered under a December moon, a mosaic of steel and glass that pulsed with ambition. On the 42nd floor of Caldwell Enterprises, Ethan Caldwell stood before a wall of windows, his sharp gray eyes scanning the city below. At 34, the white American CEO had carved an empire from the ashes of a childhood spent in foster homes, each move a reminder that trust was a luxury he couldn't afford. His lean frame, clad in a tailored charcoal suit, was as unyielding as the corporate world he dominated. Tonight, though, his empire teetered on the edge of collapse. The board's ultimatum echoed in his mind: project a stable family image, or lose control of the company he'd built from nothing. Ethan's jaw tightened. Stability, family values, words that felt foreign to a man who'd learned early that reliance on others led to betrayal. At 17, he'd clawed out of the system, earning a scholarship to MIT and turning a single software patent into a tech conglomerate. But success hadn't erased the scars of abandonment or the sting of a fiancé's betrayal 6 years prior, when she sold his company's secrets to a rival. Now, the board demanded a wife, a child, a facade of domesticity to appease investors. Ethan's fingers grazed the silk of his tie, loosening it as if it were a noose. He didn't show vulnerability. He didn't do family. Yet without them, he risked everything. Across the city, in a dimly lit studio apartment that smelled of baby formula and damp walls, Nia Jackson sat on the edge of a sagging mattress, her dark eyes fixed on an eviction notice. The paper trembled in her hands. The words stark: $2,400 due in 3 days, or she and her 6-month-old son, Malik, would be homeless. At 28, the Black American single mother had fought too many battles to count. Against poverty, against a system that seemed rigged, against her ex-husband, Derek, whose cruelty had left her with $24,000 in debt and a restraining order she wasn't sure would hold. Nia's part-time job at a diner barely covered diapers and formula, let alone rent or the medical bills from Malik's birth. "It's okay, baby," she whispered to Malik, asleep in her arms, his tiny chest rising with each breath. His soft curls framed a face that mirrored her own: deep brown skin, stubborn chin, eyes full of trust. Nia's voice cracked, but she forced strength into it. "Mama's going to figure this out." The lie tasted bitter. Derek had drained their joint accounts before she fled, his parting words a venomous promise: "You and that kid will have nothing if you leave me." The bruises on her arms had faded, but the fear lingered, a shadow that grew darker with each debt collector's call. Nia's phone buzzed, another voicemail from a creditor she couldn't face. She ignored it, her gaze drifting to a legal aid pamphlet she'd picked up at the library. It listed resources for survivors of domestic abuse, a small spark of hope in her darkening world. She'd called the hotline earlier, learning that Derek's documented abuse could strengthen her case for full custody. But legal aid was overwhelmed, and court dates were months away. The system, she thought bitterly, wasn't built for women like her. Black, single, scraping by in a city that worshipped wealth. Still, Nia clung to the pamphlet, symbolizing her refusal to surrender. She'd left Derek, hadn't she? She'd carried Malik and a diaper bag into the night, choosing freedom over fear. But now, with the heat shut off and Malik's blanket too thin, doubt crept in. Had she traded one trap for another? Still staring out his window, Ethan barely registered his assistant's voice through the intercom. "Mr. Caldwell, the board meeting materials are ready." He didn't reply, his mind churning. Tomorrow's presentation would decide his fate. The board wanted a married man, a leader who embodied their vision of stability. Ethan scoffed. Marriage was a contract that could be broken, just like his engagement had been. He'd vowed never to let emotions cloud his judgment again. "Cancel my dinner," he said finally, his voice low, decisive. "I'll be here late." The intercom went silent, leaving him alone with the city's cold pulse. Nia, wrapping Malik in every blanket she owned, felt the apartment's chill seep into her bones. Malik stirred, his tiny hand grasping her finger, and her resolve hardened. She couldn't let him suffer. The legal aid number was a start, but it wasn't enough. She needed air, needed to think. Bundling Malik into his carrier, she stepped into the Seattle night, the cold biting her skin. The streets were quiet, save for the hum of distant traffic. Her feet carried her without direction, through unfamiliar neighborhoods, until she found herself in the business district. Towering buildings loomed like monuments to a world she'd never belonged to. She paused outside a gleaming skyscraper, its sign reading Caldwell Enterprises. The lit windows above hinted at lives driven by purpose, security, everything she lacked. From his perch, Ethan noticed a solitary figure below, a woman cradling a baby against the December chill. Something about her stillness, her quiet defiance, caught his attention. Not compassion. He'd buried that long ago. But curiosity. She was a stranger, a fleeting image in the city's vast canvas, yet her presence lingered in his mind. Nia, unaware of the eyes on her, hugged Malik closer, whispering, "We'll make it, baby." The city around her offered no answers, only the promise of a fight she couldn't afford to lose. Neither she nor Ethan could know that fate was already weaving their paths together, setting the stage for a bargain that would change them both. Nia Jackson sat on the worn mattress in her dim studio apartment, and the eviction notice was a cold weight on her lap. The scrawled numbers, $2,400 due in 3 days, mocked her. Malik slept in her arms, his soft breaths a fragile rhythm against the chaos of her thoughts. The apartment's walls, stained with years of neglect, seemed to close in. The faint smell of mildew, a reminder of how far she'd fallen. Derek's betrayal had stripped her of everything: savings, credit, safety. But Nia refused to break. She'd survived his fists. She'd survived this too. Her gaze fell on the legal aid pamphlet, its edges creased from restless fingers. Earlier that day, she'd called the hotline listed on its cover, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. The operator, a woman with a calm, practiced tone, had explained the steps to strengthen her restraining order against Derek. "Documented abuse can support a custody case," she'd said, "but you'll need a lawyer, and our wait list is months long." Nia had thanked her, jotting down notes on a scrap of paper. File for emergency aid, gather police reports, contact a pro bono clinic. The system was a maze, its paths narrow for a single mother with no resources. But Nia clung to the possibility of fighting back. She'd left Derek, hadn't she? That night, with Malik in a carrier and a diaper bag slung over her shoulder, she'd chosen freedom. Now, she needed a plan to keep it. Malik stirred, his tiny hand curling around her finger. His warmth anchored her, a reminder of why she fought. Derek's threats echoed in her mind. "You'll have nothing, Nia. You and that kid." The memory of his voice, smooth but laced with venom, sent a shiver down her spine. He'd never wanted Malik, but he craved control, a need rooted in his failures. A business venture that collapsed under his arrogance, leaving him bitter and vengeful. Nia knew he'd use Malik to punish her, to drag her back into his cage. She wouldn't let him win. The apartment's heat had been off for 2 days, and the chill seeped into her bones. Malik's blanket, a thrift store find, was too thin for December's bite. Nia's diner shifts barely covered formula and diapers, let alone the debt Derek had left in her name. She checked her phone. Another missed call from a creditor, the voicemail light blinking like a warning. Ignoring it, she opened a browser and searched for local shelters, her fingers hesitating over the screen. Sharing a cot with Malik, in an overcrowded room made her stomach churn. She'd heard stories, families turned away, children catching colds in drafty halls. No, she thought, not yet. There had to be another way. Her thoughts spiraled, each option dimmer than the last. Her parents were gone, killed in a car crash a decade ago. Friends like Tasha, her college roommate, had drifted away during Derek's campaign to isolate her, calling her a bad influence. Pride had kept Nia from reaching out since, but tonight, the weight of Malik's future pressed harder than her ego. She needed air, a moment to think. Wrapping Malik in every blanket she owned, 3, all frayed, she secured him in his carrier and stepped into the Seattle night. The cold hit like a slap, but it sharpened her focus. She walked without a plan, her sneakers scuffing against wet pavement, the city's hum a distant pulse. The streets were nearly empty, save for a few taxis cutting through the dark. Nia's path led her through unfamiliar neighborhoods, past corner stores and shuttered cafes, until she reached the business district. Skyscrapers towered overhead, their lit windows like eyes watching her struggle. She paused outside a building with a sleek sign, Caldwell Enterprises. Its glass facade reflected the city's glow, symbolizing wealth and security she'd never known. Nia hugged Malik closer, his warmth a lifeline. "We're tougher than this, baby," she whispered, her breath visible in the frigid air. She imagined the people inside those lit offices, driven, purposeful, untouched by eviction notices or empty cupboards. What would it be like to belong to that world? Unseen, high above, Ethan Caldwell watched from his office, his gaze catching on the solitary woman below. Her stillness, the way she held her child against the cold, stirred something he couldn't name. Not empathy, not yet, but a flicker of recognition. She was fighting, just as he was, against a world that demanded more than either could give alone. Oblivious to his scrutiny, Nia adjusted Malik's blanket and turned back toward her apartment, her mind racing with half-formed plans. Another call to legal aid, a second job, anything to keep Malik safe. The city offered no promises, only challenges. But Nia's resolve burned brighter than her fear. She didn't know that this moment, this pause outside Ethan's domain, was the first thread in a tapestry that would bind their fates. The Seattle night pressed against Nia Jackson, the cold seeping through her thin jacket as she stood outside Caldwell Enterprises, Malik bundled tightly in his carrier. The skyscraper's glass facade loomed, its lit windows starkly contrasting with her darkened apartment. She adjusted Malik's blanket, her breath clouding in the frigid air. Her mind churned with the legal aid operator's words. Months for a court date, no guarantee of safety from Derek's threats. She'd walk these streets to escape the suffocating weight of her eviction notice. But the city offered no solutions, only reminders of her isolation. Malik cooed softly, his warmth grounding her. She wouldn't let him down, not after escaping Derek's control. High above, Ethan Caldwell pushed through the glass doors of his building, the December chill hitting him like a challenge. His board meeting loomed, the demand for a family image threatening his control over Caldwell Enterprises. He'd canceled dinner, his mind racing with strategies to outmaneuver the board's ultimatum. Independence had been his shield since childhood, but now it felt like a liability. As he headed toward his waiting car, a sharp sound cut through his thoughts. A baby's cry, piercing the quiet street. His gray eyes scanned the darkness, landing on Nia, her silhouette framed against the glow of his building. She rocked Malik gently, her protective and defiant movements stirring something in Ethan. Not compassion he'd buried that years ago, but opportunity. He crossed the street with measured steps, his polished shoes clicking on the pavement. Nia sensed his approach before she saw him, her body tensing as a man in an immaculate suit emerged from the shadows. His presence screamed wealth, from the platinum watch glinting on his wrist to the sharp lines of his coat. "You're not from around here," Ethan said, his voice flat, not a question but a statement. Nia's eyes narrowed, her grip on Malik tightening. Everything about this stranger screamed danger, not the physical kind she'd fled from Derek, but a colder, more calculated threat. "I'm fine," she said, her voice steady despite the exhaustion weighing her down, "and just getting some air." Ethan's lips curved, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "In December, at midnight, with a baby? That's not fine." His gaze flicked to Malik, then back to her, assessing her like a contract to be signed. "When was the last time you ate a proper meal?" The question caught Nia off guard, her cheeks flushing with anger and shame. "That's none of your business," she snapped, her pride flaring. Ethan tilted his head, unfazed. "You're desperate. No money, no place to go, using that baby to shield yourself from the world." His words cut deep, each one a jab at her reality. "You don't know me," Nia shot back, her voice low but fierce. She'd faced worse than this man's judgment, Derek's fists, his threats to destroy her and Malik. Ethan's gaze softened for a fraction of a second, almost imperceptible, as Malik uttered a small cry. "He's hungry," Nia whispered, more to herself, her composure cracking under the weight of her son's needs. Ethan seized the moment, his voice calm but deliberate. "There's a diner 2 blocks away. Open all night. Good food. I'm not asking you to pay." He pulled out his phone, scrolling with casual precision. "I have a proposition for you." Nia's stomach twisted, every instinct screaming to run. She'd heard propositions before, Derek's promises of love that turned to control. She said, "I'm not that kind of person," her tone icy despite the fear pulsing through her. Ethan's expression didn't change. His voice was matter-of-fact. "This is business. You need help. I need a solution to a problem. We could help each other." Nia searched his face for the predatory intent she'd learned to expect, but found only cold calculation. "What kind of problem?" she asked, hating the curiosity in her voice. Ethan said, "I need a wife and a child," tucking his phone away for appearances. "My company's board demands stability and a family image. I'll pay your debts, provide a home, food, and everything your son needs. 2 years, minimum. A contract." Nia stared, her mind racing. This man was offering salvation at a cost she couldn't yet grasp. "You're insane," she breathed, clutching Malik closer. "I'm practical," Ethan countered, his eyes locked on hers. "You're out of options. I'm offering you one." Malik's cries grew louder, his small face scrunching in distress. Nia rocked him gently, her heart aching. She thought of the legal aid pamphlet, the shelter websites, the system that offered no immediate help to women like her, trapped by poverty, by an abuser's shadow. This stranger's offer was a lifeline, but it felt like trading one cage for another. "I don't even know your name," she said, her voice wavering. "Ethan Caldwell," he replied, the name carrying the weight of his empire. "And you are?" "Nia Jackson," she said, standing taller. "This is Malik." Ethan glanced at Malik, his expression unreadable but softer, just for a moment. "Dinner first," he said, turning toward the diner, "details after." "Unless you'd rather stay out here." Nia looked down at Malik, his trusting eyes meeting hers. She had no money, no safety net, only a mother's resolve and a system that seemed designed to fail her. Ethan's offer was a gamble, but so was staying on these streets. "Fine," she said, her voice firm despite the uncertainty. "But this isn't a yes." Ethan nodded, leading the way, and Nia followed, praying she wasn't walking into a trap. The diner's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, glaring over cracked vinyl booths and a worn linoleum floor. Nia Jackson sat across from Ethan Caldwell, Malik asleep in his carrier beside her, his soft breaths a quiet anchor in the storm of her thoughts. Ethan's tailored suit and platinum watch looked out of place in the dingy space, his posture rigid, as if he were negotiating a merger rather than offering a lifeline. Nia's hands gripped the chipped coffee mug, its warmth doing little to ease the chill of his proposition. A 2-year contract to pose as his wife. Her debts erased. Malik's needs met, in exchange for a public facade of family. The words hung between them like a contract waiting for her signature. Ethan leaned back, his gray eyes studying her with clinical precision. Your debts, eviction notice, medical bills, whatever your ex-husband left you with, gone within a week. You and your son live in my penthouse. Food, medical care, and an education fund. In return, you appear at events and play the devoted wife. 2 years, minimum. No complications. His voice was flat, each word measured, but Nia caught the faintest flicker in his gaze when he glanced at Malik, a crack in his icy facade. She wanted to trust that flicker, but trust had burned her before. Why me? Nia asked, her voice steady despite the turmoil in her chest. You could hire anyone. Ethan's lips twitched, not quite a smile. You're desperate enough to say yes and strong enough to pull it off. That child deserves better than what you're facing alone. The bluntness stung, but it was the truth. Nia thought of the legal aid pamphlet in her pocket, the operator's warning about months-long wait lists, and the shelter websites with endless intake forms. The system wasn't built to save women like her, trapped by debt, stalked by an ex whose need for control stemmed from his failures. Derek's business collapse had turned his charm into cruelty, and Nia knew he'd use Malik to drag her back, not out of love, but to prove he could. I'm not a commodity, she said, her tone sharp. You're not buying me. Ethan's expression didn't waver. I'm offering a transaction. You need resources. I need an image. We both win. Nia's stomach growled, betraying her hunger, and she hated how it underscored her vulnerability. The waitress approached, her smile tired but kind. What'll it be? Ethan ordered without glancing at the menu. Pot roast special for her, formula for the baby. Nia bristled. I can order for myself. But the thought of hot food, something she hadn't had in days, softened her resolve. The pot roast is fine, she admitted. And formula, please. As the waitress left, Nia's mind raced. She thought of Tasha, her college roommate, who'd been her rock until Derek isolated her, calling Tasha a threat to his control. Pride had kept Nia from reaching out since, but tonight, with Malik's future on the line, she needed perspective. She pulled out her cheap prepaid phone and texted Tasha. In trouble. Need advice. Can you talk? The reply came quickly. Call me. Now. Nia excused herself, stepping outside the diner, the cold air biting as she dialed. Nia, where are you? Tasha's voice was thick with worry. I've been scared sick since you stopped answering. I'm okay, Nia said, her voice cracking. Malik's okay. But Derek left us with nothing. And now there's this guy. She explained Ethan's offer, the debts, the penthouse, and the fake marriage. Tasha listened, then said, You're stronger than anyone I know, Nia. You left Derek. You survived. But this deal, it's a cage with better wallpaper. Malik needs you whole, not just safe. Nia nodded, though Tasha couldn't see. I know, but the system's failing us. Legal aid can't move fast enough, and Derek's threats aren't empty. What choice do I have? Tasha's silence was heavy. Just promise you won't lose yourself. You're more than a mother, Nia. You're you. Back inside, Nia studied Ethan as he sipped his untouched coffee, his gaze drifting to Malik. "What happens if I say no?" she asked, sitting down. Ethan's eyes met hers, unyielding but not cruel. "You walk out, figure out your debts, and face your ex alone. My driver will take you wherever you want." Nia looked at Malik, his peaceful face a reminder of her fight. She thought of the shelter cots, Derek's messages, and the legal system's delays. Ethan's offer was a gamble, but so was survival. "I need to see the contract," she said finally, her voice firm, "and I'm not signing tonight." Ethan nodded, a spark of respect in his eyes. "My lawyer will have it ready by 5:30 a.m. My driver will take you to a hotel suite I've arranged. No charge. Think it over." Nia hesitated, then nodded. The waitress brought the food, and Nia ate silently, the pot roast warm and grounding. Ethan paid, leaving a generous tip, and his driver, a quiet man with kind eyes, waited outside. As they drove to the Cascade Hotel, Nia clutched Malik, the city blurring past. The suite was lavish, with a crib already set up, as if Ethan had anticipated her indecision. She laid Malik down, his tiny hand grasping her finger, and sat by the window, the Seattle skyline a glittering maze. Nia pulled out her phone, rereading Tasha's words. She thought of the legal aid notes, the police reports she'd filed against Derek, the systemic hurdles that left her with few allies. Ethan's offer was a lifeline, but it came with strings, control, just like Derek's, but dressed in wealth. Yet Malik's safety was non-negotiable. At 3:00 a.m., her phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. "Offer stands until 6 a.m. Lawyer available at 5:30. EC." Nia typed back, "I'll be there at 5:30. She looked at Malik, sleeping soundly, and whispered, "This is for you, baby." The decision felt like a surrender and a fight, one she'd wage on her terms. Nia Jackson stepped into Ethan Caldwell's penthouse, the weight of her decision settling like a stone in her chest. The space was a study in luxury. Polished marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows framing Elliott Bay, furniture that looked untouched by human hands. Malik's carrier felt heavy in her arms, his soft gurgles contrasting with the sterile silence. She'd signed Ethan's contract that morning, the lawyer's pen scratching out terms that bound her to a 2-year facade. Her debts cleared, Malik's needs met, in exchange for playing Ethan's wife. The ink was dry, but her resolve wavered. This wasn't her world. She felt like an intruder in a museum. Ethan led her down a hallway lined with abstract art, his movements precise, his charcoal suit as immaculate as ever. "Your rooms are here," he said, his voice neutral, betraying nothing. He opened a door to a nursery that stole Nia's breath, a mahogany crib with plush bedding, a rocking chair by the window, shelves stocked with educational toys. It was almost too perfect, like a stage set for a life she couldn't claim. "It's beautiful," she said, her tone soft but tinged with unease. Malik babbled, reaching for a stuffed elephant, and Nia set him down, watching his tiny hands explore. The sight grounded her, a reminder of why she'd said yes. Ethan stood by the door, his gray eyes flickering between Nia and Malik. He said I wanted him to have the best, the words clipped but not unkind. Nia nodded, adjusting Malik's blanket. "He's 6 months old. The best thing for him is a place where he can be messy, not perfect." Ethan's brow furrowed, as if her words were a puzzle he couldn't solve. For a moment, silence stretched between them, heavy with the unspoken rules of their arrangement. Nia's thoughts drifted to the legal aid pamphlet in her bag, the notes she'd scribbled about custody battles. She'd signed Ethan's contract, but hadn't given up her fight. She'd called the legal aid hotline again that morning, leaving a message to follow up on her restraining order against Derek. This penthouse was a refuge, not a surrender. "You don't trust easily," Ethan said suddenly, his voice low, breaking the quiet. Nia met his gaze, surprised by the observation. "Neither do you," she countered, her tone steady. "Why is that?" Ethan hesitated, his fingers brushing the cuff of his sleeve, a rare sign of uncertainty. "I learned early that trust is a liability," he said finally. "My parents abandoned me to the foster system. I bounced between homes, each one promising stability until it didn't. I built my first company at 22, only to have my fiancée, Lauren, sell its secrets to a competitor. She was charming, perfect for the board's image, until she wasn't." His voice carried a bitter edge, the scar of betrayal still raw. Nia's chest tightened, not with pity but recognition. Derek had been charming too, his promises of love morphing into control after his business failed, his insecurities fueling his need to dominate her. "I'm sorry," she said, meaning it. "But you built all this anyway." She gestured to the penthouse, with a view of Seattle's skyline. Ethan's lips twitched, not quite a smile at a cost. "Emotions are weaknesses in my world." Nia shook her head, cradling Malik as he reached for her hair. "Not in his world," she said, nodding at her son. "Emotions are what keep him safe." Ethan's gaze softened, lingering on Malik as the baby clapped his hands, delighted by the noise. "I don't know anything about children," Ethan admitted, his voice quieter now, almost vulnerable. Nia saw an opening, a chance to bridge their worlds. "Would you like to try?" she asked, setting Malik on a soft mat. He loves stacking blocks. Ethan hesitated, then knelt beside Malik, his suit jacket creasing as he picked up a wooden block. Malik giggled, grabbing it, and Ethan's expression shifted. Surprise, maybe even wonder. Nia watched, her heart stirring despite her resolve to keep her distance. This man, so guarded, was letting her son crack his armor. The moment was fleeting. Ethan stood, brushing off his knees, his mask back in place. "The board meeting is tomorrow," he said, his tone businesslike again. "We'll need to present you and Malik as my family. My stylist will deliver a wardrobe. 2 or 3 events a month, charity galas, dinners. Nothing too demanding." Nia nodded, her mind flashing to the legal aid notes. She'd play her part, but she'd also keep fighting for her and Malik's future outside this contract. "I'll be ready," she said, her voice firm. "But I'm doing this for him, not you." Ethan's eyes met hers, a flicker of respect in their depths. "Understood," he said, turning to leave. As the door closed, Nia sat beside Malik, watching him stack blocks with unsteady hands. The penthouse felt like a gilded cage, but it was also a shield against Derek's threats, against the system that offered no quick fixes for women in her position. She pulled out her phone, checking for a response from legal aid. Nothing yet. But she'd keep pushing, keep planning. Ethan's world was temporary. Malik's safety was forever. As Malik's laughter filled the nursery, Nia felt a spark of hope. This bargain might save them, but she'd ensure it didn't define them. The boardroom at Caldwell Enterprises hummed with tension, its mahogany table and leather chairs a battlefield for corporate power. Nia Jackson sat in the gallery, Malik in her arms, his soft babbling a quiet counterpoint to the room's charged silence. She wore a cream-colored dress chosen by Ethan's stylist, and its tailored fit was both foreign and empowering. Her heart raced, not from the board's scrutiny, but from the weight of her role, posing as Ethan's wife to secure his leadership. She'd prepared for this, rehearsing answers with Ethan the night before, but the stakes felt heavier now. Her phone, tucked in her purse, held a new voicemail from legal aid about her restraining order against Derek. a reminder that her fight extended beyond this room. Ethan stood at the head of the table, his charcoal suit impeccable, his gray eyes scanning the 12 board members. Margaret Winters, the silver-haired chair, leaned forward, her gaze sharp. "Mr. Caldwell, we've been clear," she said, her voice measured. "The company needs stability, family values, and a leader who reflects our vision." Ethan's jaw tightened, but his voice was steady. "I understand, and I'm here to show I can deliver." He turned to Naya, his eyes meeting hers, and for a moment, something flickered in his gaze. Warmth, not calculation. "I'd like you to meet my wife, Nia, and our son, Malik." The lie should have felt cold, a script they'd rehearsed, but Ethan's tone carried a quiet possession that sent a jolt through Nia. She stood, Malik's weight grounding her, and moved to his side, acutely aware of the board's eyes. "Mrs. Caldwell?" Margaret said, her voice softening but probing. "This is unexpected. When did you marry?" Nia's rehearsed answer came smoothly. "A private ceremony. 6 months ago. We wanted to focus on our family first." Ethan's hand rested lightly on her back, a gesture meant for show, but its warmth felt personal, stirring something in her chest she wasn't ready to name. Richard Hayes, a board member with a predatory glint, leaned back. 6 months kept secret? Convenient timing, Mr. Caldwell. Ethan's gaze hardened, but before he could respond, Malik cooed loudly, his tiny hand grasping at Nia's necklace. The room paused, and Ethan, without hesitation, reached for Malik. "May I?" he asked Nia, his voice softer than she'd ever heard. She nodded, passing Malik to him, and watched, stunned, as Ethan cradled her son with infinite care. Malik quieted, his dark eyes fixed on Ethan, tiny fingers tugging at his tie. The board watched, transfixed, as Ethan's posture softened, a smile breaking through his usual reserve. "He's been a good baby," Ethan said, his voice carrying a note of wonder that surprised even himself. Something is humbling about this, being responsible for someone so small. The admission was unguarded, raw, and Nia felt her carefully built walls crack. This wasn't the cold CEO who'd offered her a contract in the diner. This was a man discovering something beyond ambition. Margaret's eyes glistened, her skepticism melting. "He's beautiful," she said. "How does he sleep?" Nia smiled, her nerves easing. "Through the night, mostly. He loves stacking blocks, though he knocks them down more than he builds." Ethan swayed slightly, instinctively soothing Malik, and Nia's heart fluttered. She'd seen him command boardrooms, but this, his tenderness with her son, was something new. "Family changes everything," Ethan continued, his gaze shifting to Nia, his voice rough with emotion. "It makes you realize that power and money mean nothing without someone to share them." The words hung in the air, heavy with truth. Nia met his eyes, and for a moment, the room faded, the lie feeling dangerously real. His hand brushed hers as he returned Malik, the contact electric, and she saw his breath hitch, mirroring her own. Richard cleared his throat, breaking the spell. A touching display, but why the secrecy? Ethan's hand lingered on Nia's arm, protective. When you find something worth more than your own life, you don't flaunt it. You protect it. The quiet menace in his voice silenced Richard, and Nia felt a warmth spread through her, not just from his touch, but from the conviction in his words. This wasn't just for show. Something was shifting between them, something neither had planned. Margaret stood, her expression softened. "Mr. Caldwell, you've addressed our concerns. Let's adjourn to discuss this, development." The board members filed out, several pausing to smile at Malik, who babbled happily. Alone, Nia turned to Ethan, her voice breathless. That was more than I expected. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, mussing its perfect style, making him look younger, vulnerable. You were perfect, he said, his eyes searching hers. So were you, she replied, the words slipping out. I've never seen you like that. Human. Ethan's gaze softened, a rare vulnerability breaking through. You and Malik, you make me feel that way. The confession hung between them, charged with implications. Nia's heart raced, but she held Malik closer, grounding herself. She'd agreed to this for her son, but Ethan's tenderness blurred the lines. Her phone buzzed in her purse, likely legal aid, a reminder of her ongoing fight against Derek. She'd play this role, but keep her path clear. As they left the boardroom, Ethan's hand brushed hers again, and Nia wondered if this facade could become something more. Nia Jackson stood in the nursery of Ethan Caldwell's penthouse, the soft glow of a nightlight casting shadows across Malik's mahogany crib. The Seattle skyline sparkled beyond the window, a distant promise of calm that felt out of reach. Malik babbled softly, stacking a wooden block before knocking it over with a delighted squeal. Nia smiled, but her heart was uneasy. The boardroom triumph had secured Ethan's position, and his tenderness with Malik had stirred something in her, a warmth she hadn't expected from their contract. Yet, her phone, tucked in her pocket, held a voicemail from legal aid, a reminder of the battle she still faced against Derek, her ex-husband, whose threats loomed like a storm on the horizon. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Found you, Nia. Time to come back. Her blood turned to ice, the words a sickening echo of Derek's control. She sank onto the rocking chair, clutching Malik's stuffed elephant, her breath shallow. Derek wasn't just a ghost from her past. He was driven by a need to dominate, his charm a mask for insecurities that had festered since his tech startup collapsed 3 years ago. The failure stripped him of status, leaving him obsessed with reclaiming power over her, Malik, and the life he felt she'd stolen by leaving. Nia had seen his cruelty firsthand, the drained accounts, the bruises, the promise to ensure she'd have nothing. Now, he'd found her. With Malik's favorite board book in hand, Ethan entered the nursery, his tie loosened from a long day. His gray eyes caught Nia's expression, and his easy demeanor vanished. What's wrong? He asked, his voice sharp and concerned. Nia hesitated, then handed him her phone, the text glaring on the screen. Ethan's jaw tightened as he read it, his fingers gripping the device like a weapon. Derek, he said. Not a question. Nia nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. He's persistent. Always has been. His business failed, and he blamed me, saying I distracted him. Malik, he's just a tool to him, a way to keep me in line. Ethan set the phone down and knelt beside Malik, who reached for him with chubby hands, babbling, Baba. The sight of Ethan's gentleness with her son steadied Nia, but fear lingered. He's got connections, she continued, her voice steadier now. Lawyers, old business partners, people who owe him favors. I called legal aid again today, but they said the restraining order might not hold if he pushes for custody. The system, it's slow, Ethan. It's not built for people like me. Her words carried the weight of a truth she'd learned too well. Justice was a luxury, often out of reach for those without resources. Ethan's eyes darkened, a storm brewing behind his calm facade. He won't touch you or Malik, he said, his voice low, dangerous. My security team will track how he found you. We'll tighten protection, cameras, escorts, whatever it takes. He stood, pulling out his phone, his fingers moving swiftly to text his head of security. Nia watched, her mind flashing to the legal aid notes she'd scribbled. Gather evidence. File for emergency custody. Stay vigilant. She'd been proactive, but Derek's reach felt endless. "You don't know him," she said, rising to face Ethan. "He doesn't make idle threats. If he found me, he's got a plan." Ethan paused, his gaze locking on hers. "Then we'll outmaneuver him. I've built an empire by staying ahead of men like him." His confidence was reassuring, but Nia's fear wasn't just for herself. "What if he goes after you, your company? This deal we have, it's put you in his path." Ethan's expression softened, a rare vulnerability breaking through. He said, "You and Malik are worth it," the words catching Nia off guard. He stepped closer, his hand brushing Malik's curls, then hers. "I protect what's mine." The possessiveness in his tone sent a shiver through Nia. Not fear, but something warmer, more dangerous. She wanted to believe him, but Derek's shadow was long. Malik chose that moment to knock over his blocks, giggling as they scattered. Nia knelt beside him, her heart swelling with fierce love. "He's why I keep fighting," she said, more to herself than Ethan. "I've got a meeting with the pro bono lawyer tomorrow. I'm not just relying on you." Ethan nodded, respect flickering in his eyes. "Good. But you're not fighting alone anymore." Nia's phone buzzed again, and another text said, "You can't hide. Malik belongs with me." Her hands trembled, but she showed it to Ethan, who read it coldly. "He's wrong," Ethan said, his voice ablade. "Malik belongs with us." The word hung between them, heavy with meaning. Nia met his gaze, her fear tempered by a growing trust. She'd entered this bargain for Malik's safety, but Ethan's resolve became her shield. As Malik clapped his hands, oblivious to the threat, Nia vowed to keep pushing through legal aid, this contract, and whatever Derek planned. The storm was coming, but she wasn't facing it alone. The penthouse nursery glowed with late afternoon light, casting a warm sheen over Malik's mahogany crib. Nia Jackson sat on the floor, her legs crossed, as Malik stacked colorful blocks with unsteady hands, his giggles filling the space. The Seattle skyline stretched beyond the window, a quiet backdrop to the fragile peace she'd found in Ethan Caldwell's world. 3 weeks had passed since the boardroom triumph, and their routine had settled into something almost natural. Shared breakfasts, evenings where Ethan shed his suit jacket to read Malik bedtime stories. Yet, Derek's threatening texts lingered in Nia's mind, a shadow over their calm. Her phone, charging nearby, held a new message from legal aid confirming her meeting with a pro bono lawyer tomorrow. A step toward securing Malik's safety. Ethan entered, a children's book tucked under his arm. His tie loosened, revealing a rare ease. He'd been true to his word, bolstering security with cameras and escorts. But Nia sensed his tension, mirroring her own. "He's getting good at that," Ethan said, nodding at Malik's wobbly tower. Nia smiled, her heart softening. "He's persistent, like his mama." She handed Malik another block, his chubby fingers grasping it as he babbled, "Da-da," a sound that made Ethan pause, his gray eyes widening. Nia laughed softly. "He's been saying that all week. Don't let it go to your head." Ethan knelt beside them, his expensive slacks creasing as he helped Malik stack a block. "Too late," he said, his voice light, but tinged with something more profound. Malik knocked the tower over, squealing, and Ethan's chuckle was unguarded, a sound Nia hadn't heard before. She watched him, struck by how this man, once so cold, now seemed home in her son's chaos. She'd taught him to embrace Malik's messiness, puree on his tie, fingerprints on his watch, and he'd learned eagerly, his usual control giving way to such moments. Nia's thoughts drifted to her legal aid efforts. She'd spent hours compiling police reports and messages from Derek, building a case to strengthen her restraining order. The system was slow, often failing women like her, trapped by abusers with resources and charm. Derek's need for control, born from his failed tech venture, made him relentless. He didn't want Malik. He tried to break her. Yet, in the nursery, with Ethan's deep voice reading "Goodnight Moon" to Malik, Nia felt hope. This wasn't just a contract anymore. It was something real, something worth protecting. As Malik yawned, Nia lifted him to the crib, her movements tender. Ethan stood close, his warmth a quiet presence. "He loves your voice," she said, tucking Malik in. Deep tones soothed him. Ethan's gaze met hers, intense, vulnerable. He admitted, "I never thought I'd be good at this," his hand brushing Malik's curls. "After Lauren, I thought trust was a mistake." Nia nodded, understanding. Derek's betrayal had taught her the same, but Malik had shown her love could heal. "You're learning," she said softly. "We both are." The nursery fell silent, save for Malik's soft breathing. Ethan stepped closer, his fingers grazing hers. "Nia," he said, his voice rough. "What we're building here, it's more than I expected." Her heart raced, the air charged with unspoken feelings. She wanted to pull away, to guard herself. But his eyes held her open, unguarded, a man who'd once vowed never to care. "I know," she whispered. "It scares me too." Malik stirred, babbling da-da again, and they both laughed, the tension easing. "He's got terrible timing," Ethan said, but his smile was warm, genuine. Nia's phone buzzed, shattering the moment. She checked it, her stomach dropping at another text from Derek. "You can't keep him from me forever." Her hands trembled, but she showed Ethan, who read it with a cold fury. "He's escalating," Ethan said, his voice ablade. "My security team is tracing his messages. We'll stop him." Nia nodded, her resolve hardening. "I'm meeting the lawyer tomorrow," she said. "I've got evidence, texts, reports. I'm not just waiting for him to make a move." Ethan's eyes flickered with respect. "You're stronger than he knows." Malik's sleepy coo drew their attention, his tiny hand clutching the stuffed elephant. Nia's heart swelled, a fierce love anchoring her. "He's why I keep going," she said. Ethan's gaze softened, resting on Malik, then her. "He said you're not alone in this," his voice low. "Sure, neither of you." The words felt like a vow, and Nia's chest tightened with an emotion she wasn't ready to name. She'd entered this bargain for survival, but now, in these quiet moments, she felt something more profound. Love, fragile but growing. Derek's threat loomed, but with Ethan by her side, she felt ready to face it. The Four Seasons ballroom glittered under crystal chandeliers, showcasing Seattle's elite sipping champagne and trading polished smiles. Nia Jackson stood at Ethan Caldwell's side, her crimson gown hugging her curves, its silk fabric both empowering and exposing. Ethan's hand rested lightly on her back, a steady anchor as they navigated the crowd. This was their first public appearance as Mr. and Mrs. Caldwell, a test of their contracted marriage. But Derek's recent threats made every glance feel like a spotlight. Nia's purse held her phone, with a new text from her pro bono lawyer confirming a court date to strengthen her restraining order. A small victory, but Derek's shadow loomed larger tonight. Ethan's gray eyes scanned the room, his tailored tuxedo accentuating his commanding presence. "Stay close," he murmured, his voice low, protective. Nia nodded, her heart racing not from the crowd, but from the memory of Derek's texts. "You can't hide. Malik belongs with me." She'd shared every message with Ethan, whose security team was tracing Derek's movements. But the gala's open setting felt like a trap. Nia had prepared for this, memorizing her role as Ethan's wife. But her legal research, police reports, custody laws, gave her a quiet strength. She wasn't just playing a part, but fighting for her son. The board chair, Margaret Winters, approached, her emerald dress catching the light. "Mr. and Mrs. Caldwell, you're radiant," she said, her smile genuine. "Marriage suits you." Ethan's hand tightened briefly on Nia's back, his voice warm. "I'm a lucky man." Nia matched his smile, the act effortless now, their shared glances carrying a truth that went beyond their contract. The crowd's murmurs followed them, whispers of the cold CEO tamed by love, and Nia felt a flicker of pride. They moved through the gala, Ethan charming donors, Nia fielding questions about Malik, who was safe at home with Maria, the housekeeper, under tight security. At the silent auction, Nia paused by a vibrant painting, its bold strokes a fleeting distraction. A prickle of unease made her turn, and her breath caught. Derek stood by the bar, his familiar frame exuding charm, but his dark eyes held a predatory glint. He raised his champagne glass in a mock toast, his smile a blade. Nia's hands shook, but she steadied herself, recalling her legal aid notes. Derek's abuse voided his custody claims. "Ethan," she whispered, not looking away. Ethan followed her gaze, his body tensing like a coiled spring. "I see him," he said, his voice deadly calm. "Stay with me." Derek sauntered through the crowd, his approach deliberate, his charm masking malice. "Well," he said, stopping before them, his voice silk over steel. "My beautiful Nia, playing house with Seattle's golden boy." Nia's spine stiffened, her voice cutting through her fear. "Ex-husband Derek, we're divorced. You have no claim here." Derek's smile didn't waver, but his eyes flashed with anger. "A piece of paper doesn't change facts, baby. Malik's mine, legally. I've got lawyers working on custody. Money talks, you know that." Nia's heart pounded, but she drew on her research. "Not when there's a restraining order and a history of abuse," she said, her tone steady. "The court won't side with you." Derek's mask slipped, his jaw tightening. He'd always hated her defiance, his need for control rooted in the humiliation of his failed startup, a wound he'd taken out on her. "You're in over your head," he said, stepping closer. Ethan moved forward, positioning himself slightly in front of Nia, his presence a quiet threat. "You need to leave," he said, his voice low, menacing. "Now." Derek laughed, drawing curious glances from nearby guests. "And who's going to make me?" "You? Caldwell?" Ethan's eyes narrowed, his tone unwavering. "If necessary. But you'll find it's in your interest to walk away." The standoff crackled with tension, the crowd's whispers growing louder. Nia felt exposed, but Ethan's hand on her arm steadied her. "This isn't over," Derek said, his gaze locking on Nia. "You and Malik will come back to me. Enjoy your little game while it lasts." He melted into the crowd, leaving Nia's pulse racing. Ethan turned to her, his eyes searching. "You okay?" Nia nodded, though her hands still trembled. "He's bluffing about custody," she said, her voice firm. "I've got the evidence, reports, texts, my lawyer's ready." Ethan's expression softened, a flicker of admiration in his gaze. "You're incredible," he said, his hand lingering on hers. Nia's chest warmed, the crowd fading as their connection deepened. Malik was safe, but Derek's threat was real. Nia knew this was only the beginning. But with Ethan by her side, she felt stronger, ready to face the fight ahead. Nia Jackson stood in the penthouse nursery, her heart pounding as she adjusted Malik's blanket. His soft coos a fragile anchor in the storm of her fear. The Seattle skyline glowed beyond the window, its calm mocking the chaos Derek's threats had unleashed. 2 days had passed since the gala, where his predatory smile had shaken her resolve. Nia's meeting with her pro bono lawyer that morning had bolstered her case. Police reports, Derek's threatening texts, and her restraining order painted a clear picture of abuse. But the legal system's sluggish pace left her vulnerable, a fact Derek exploited with chilling precision. Her phone, now silent, was a constant reminder of his reach. Ethan Caldwell had doubled security, turning the penthouse into a fortress. But Nia's unease lingered. She'd spent hours organizing evidence, emailing her lawyer updates, determined to protect Malik on her terms. As she watched Malik tug at his stuffed elephant, his curious eyes bright, she whispered, "I've got you, baby." The nursery door burst open, and Ethan's head of security, a grim-faced man named Carter, spoke urgently. "Mrs. Caldwell, we must move you and Malik to the safe room. Derek's in the building with custody papers." Nia's blood froze, her arms tightening around Malik. "How?" she demanded. "He used legal documents to get past building security," Carter said. "We're verifying them now." The elevator's chime echoed through the penthouse, followed by heavy footsteps and Derek's smooth, sickening voice. "Nia, I know you're here, baby. I've brought someone to meet our son." Nia's pulse raced but stood firm, Malik's weight grounding her. "I'm not running," she told Carter, her voice steady despite her fear. She'd faced Derek before and would face him now, not as a victim, but as a mother armed with evidence. Clutching Malik, she stepped into the main living area, where Derek stood with a smug lawyer in a pinstripe suit and 2 unfamiliar security guards. Derek's charm was intact, but his eyes held the same cruelty she'd fled. "There's my beautiful Nia," Derek said, his smile ablaze. "And my son." Nia's grip on Malik tightened, his tiny hand tugging her necklace, a reminder of her resolve. "Ex-husband," she corrected, her tone icy. "Malik's not yours. You lost that right when you raised your fists." Derek's jaw twitched, his control issues surfacing from a failed startup that left him humiliated. The lawyer stepped forward, brandishing documents. "Mr. Linton has legal paternal rights," he said smugly. "These custody papers grant immediate temporary custody, pending a hearing, due to an unstable environment, living with a man you barely know." Nia's heart sank, but her preparation kicked in. "Those papers are invalid," she said, her voice unwavering. "I've got a restraining order, police reports, and texts proving your client's abuse. The court won't honor fraud." The lawyer faltered, but Derek's smile didn't waver. "You're out of your depth, Nia. Money buys justice." The elevator chimed again, and Ethan stepped out, his gray eyes blazing with controlled fury. He took in the scene, his presence a shield. "Gentlemen," he said, his voice deceptively calm, "you're trespassing." The lawyer smirked. "We have legal authority." Ethan's phone was already out, and within moments, 3 men in suits entered. His legal team, led by his attorney, Ms. Harper. Harper said, her tone sharp, "Those documents are fraudulent. We've cross-checked with the court. No custody order exists. Mr. Linton's history of abuse and financial fraud, tax evasion, unpaid debts, invalidates any claim." Nia's preparation bolstered their case. She'd sent Harper copies of her evidence that morning. Derek's confident mask cracked, his eyes narrowing. "You think your money can buy her?" He snarled at Ethan. "She's mine." "She's not," Ethan said, stepping beside Nia, his hand brushing hers. "Neither is Malik. They're my family, legally and otherwise." Nia's chest warmed at his words, Malik's tug on her necklace grounding her. You used me as a punching bag, she said to Derek, her voice steady. You don't get to claim us now. Ethan's attorney handed Derek a new document. Sign this, relinquishing all claims to Malik and agreeing to stay away, or we expose your fraud to creditors and the IRS. Derek's face paled, his lawyer whispering urgently. With shaking hands, he signed, his defeat palpable. As they left, Derek paused at the elevator, his eyes locked on Nia. You'll regret this, he muttered. Nia met his gaze, unflinching. No, I won't. I choose my future. The doors closed, and silence fell. Nia looked at Malik, his innocent coup breaking the tension, and then at Ethan, whose eyes held a fierce pride. It's over, he said, his voice soft but certain. Nia nodded, her resolve solid. She'd fought with evidence, with allies, and won. The battle was hers, and so was the future. The penthouse was quiet, the Seattle skyline casting a soft glow through the windows, starkly contrasting the chaos of Derek's intrusion just hours ago. Nia Jackson stood in the living area, Malik asleep in her arms, his tiny hand curled around her necklace, his steady breathing a balm to her frayed nerves. Derek's defeat, his fraudulent custody papers exposed, his threats silenced by Ethan's legal team, had lifted a weight, but Nia's heart still raced. She'd fought with evidence she'd gathered, with police reports and texts meticulously compiled for her pro bono lawyer, proving her strength beyond the contract that had brought her here. Yet, the victory felt incomplete, overshadowed by the fragile bond she'd built with Ethan Caldwell. Ethan stood by the window, his usually pristine suit jacket discarded, his shirt sleeves rolled up, revealing a vulnerability that matched the disarray of his hair. He'd been a fortress during the confrontation, his gray eyes blazing as he'd stood between Nia and Derek's malice. Now, he turned to her, his expression softer, unguarded, a man stripped of his corporate armor. It's over, he said, his voice low, certain. Derek won't come near you or Malik again. Nia nodded, her throat tight. Because of you, she said, her eyes meeting his. And because of me. I sent those reports to your lawyer, Ethan. I wasn't just waiting for you to save us. Ethan's lips curved, a flicker of pride in his gaze. I know. You're stronger than anyone I've ever met. He stepped closer, his presence warm, steady. Malik stirred, cooing softly, and Nia adjusted him, her heart swelling with love for her son. Ethan's eyes followed the movement, lingering on Malik's peaceful face, returning to hers. Nia, he said, his voice rough with emotion. This started as a deal, a way to keep my company. But you and Malik, you've changed everything. He paused, his hand reaching into his pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. Nia's breath caught as Ethan dropped to one knee, the sapphire ring in the box, seeing the light like a promise. I plan to wait, to do this right, he said, his eyes locked on hers. But I can't. You and Malik are my home, my reason to be more than the man I was. Nia Jackson, will you marry me? For real this time? The words hung between them, heavy with hope and fear. Nia's heart pounded, memories flashing. The diner where Ethan's cold proposition had sparked this journey. The boardroom where his tenderness had cracked her walls. The nursery moments where love had bloomed. She'd entered this for Malik's safety. But now, faced with Ethan's vulnerability, she saw a future she wanted, not just needed. Nia hesitated, her mind racing. She'd fought alone for so long, against Derek's control, against a system that offered little help. Her lawyer's email, confirming a court date to finalize her custody, was proof of her resilience. But Ethan wasn't Derek. His protection wasn't a cage, but a partnership. She thought of Tasha's warning. Don't lose yourself. She hadn't. Through Malik's giggles, legal battles, and quiet moments with Ethan, she'd found herself. She whispered, then louder, "Yes, Ethan, I'll marry you." Ethan rose, slipping the ring onto her finger, its cool weight grounding her. He pulled her close, Malik between them, and Nia felt his heartbeat against hers, steady, real. "I love you," he said, his voice raw. "Both of you." Nia's eyes burned with tears, but she smiled, her hand brushing Malik's curls. "I love you too," she said, the admission freeing. Malik babbled, his tiny hand grabbing Ethan's shirt, as if sealing the moment with his approval. They laughed, the sound breaking the tension, a shared joy that felt like a new beginning. Nia pulled out her phone and texted Tasha. "I said yes, not for survival, but for me." Tasha's reply came swiftly. "You're living now, Nia. Don't stop." Nia looked at Ethan, his eyes warm with promise. "I was so focused on protecting Malik," she said. "I forgot what it felt like to want something for myself." Ethan's hand cupped her face, his thumb brushing her cheek. "You deserve it," he said. "We'll build this together. Real, messy, ours." Nia nodded, her resolve solid. She'd fought for Malik, for freedom, and now she'd fight for love, not as a bargain, but as a choice. The penthouse glowed with the golden light of a Seattle sunset, its warmth softening the sleek lines of Ethan Caldwell's home. Nia Jackson stood by the window, Malik in her arms, his tiny fingers smearing fingerprints on the glass, a mark of their messy, beautiful life. The sapphire ring on her finger caught the light, symbolizing Ethan's real proposal, a promise that had transformed their contract into love. Derek's defeat, his fraudulent custody papers exposed, and his threats silenced, had freed Nia from his shadow. Her legal efforts, police reports, texts, and a restraining order strengthened by her pro bono lawyer, had been her shield, proving her strength. As she watched Malik toddle toward a scattered pile of blocks, Nia felt relief and hope. Ethan entered, his tie loosened, a wedding planner's binder tucked under his arm. His gray eyes, once so guarded, now held a warmth that made Nia's heart skip. "He's making a mess again," Ethan said, a smile tugging at his lips as Malik knocked over a tower with a gleeful squeal. Nia laughed, setting Malik down. "Good. He's supposed to." Ethan knelt beside Malik, helping him stack a block, his movements natural, practiced. The man who'd once confessed to knowing nothing about children had become a father in every way that mattered. His bond with Malik as honest as the love he'd declared to Nia. They'd spent weeks planning a real wedding, not the facade of their contract, but a celebration of their chosen family. Nia had insisted on simplicity, a small ceremony with Tasha and a few close allies from her legal aid journey. But she'd also proposed something bigger, a community center for abuse survivors, funded by Ethan's resources. "I know what it's like to feel trapped," she'd told him, her voice steady. "The system failed me. Wait lists, delays, no safety net. I want to help others like me." Ethan had agreed instantly, his empire's wealth now a tool for change. The center, set to break ground next month, would offer legal aid, counseling, and safe housing, resources Nia had desperately needed. Ethan looked up from Malik, his gaze softening. He said the architect sent plans for the center today, setting the binder on the table. "It's going to have a playroom for kids like this guy," Malik babbled, clutching Ethan's finger, and Nia's chest warmed. She'd fought alone for so long, against Derek's control, rooted in his humiliation after a failed startup. and against a system prioritizing money over justice. Her legal victory had been hers, built on evidence she'd gathered, but Ethan's support had made it possible. "You're changing lives," she said, her voice thick. "Not just mine and Malik's." Ethan stood, stepping close, his hand brushing hers. "You changed mine first," he said, his voice low, raw. "I was a man who didn't believe in trust, in love. You and Malik showed me what I was missing." Nia's eyes burned with tears, but she smiled, remembering their journey. The diner where his cold offer had sparked this path, the boardroom where his tenderness had surprised her, the nursery moments where love had grown. She'd texted Tasha after the proposal, and her friend's words echoed. "You're living now, Nia. Don't stop." She hadn't. She'd chosen Ethan, not for survival, but for joy. Malik toddled toward them, clutching a block, his wobbly steps a testament to his growth. Nia knelt, catching him as he stumbled, her laughter mixing with his giggles. Ethan joined them, his hand resting on her shoulder, and for a moment, the world was just them, three souls bound by love, not contracts. "What do you think, little man?" Ethan said, ruffling Malik's curls. "Ready for us to make this official?" Malik's happy babble felt like approval, drawing a chuckle from both adults. Nia looked at Ethan, the skyline painting him in gold. "This is what I fought for," she said. "Not just safety, but this." Ethan's fingers laced with hers, the ring a quiet promise. "We'll build it together," he said. "The wedding, the center, our family." Nia nodded, her resolve unshaken. She'd faced Derek, the system, and her fears and emerged stronger. The community center was her way of giving back, ensuring others wouldn't face the same barriers. As Malik's fingerprints marked the glass, Nia saw their future. Messy, real, anchored by love. What had started as a bargain had become a life she'd never dared dream of, proof that even the coldest deals could lead to the warmest beginnings.